Do you ever feel like you've tried everything you can think of to make someone happy and it just isn't working? I sat across from a woman this week who felt like she had tried 100 different ways to help a family member feel better, and she was getting really frustrated because it wasn't working. She wanted me to help her figure out what else she could do that would work. And I'm going to be honest with you up front. This isn't a video about finding the right way to make someone happy, because there isn't one. It doesn't exist. Because you don't actually have the power to make someone else happy. I've spent over 20 years sitting across from women in exactly this spot, and I lived a version of it myself long before I ever had a name for it. Today, I'm going to walk you through 3 truths that can break the cycle that's keeping you stuck trying to manage someone else's moods. Truth number 1, I am not the thermostat. The first thing I had to do was realize I wasn't the thermostat in the room. I just believed I was. So let me tell you what I mean by that. A thermostat is something that adjusts the climate in a room. It raises it or lowers it. I had lived my whole life believing that was my main job in any situation. If someone was unhappy or sad or mad, I believed it was up to me to adjust the climate and make it better so that they would be happy. Every conversation I walked into, some part of me was checking the temperature before I even opened my mouth. I was reading the room, trying to figure out what setting I needed to be at, and then proceeding to work in an effort to change the climate. So I had a broken pattern of thinking. For years, my logic was simple. If someone was upset, it obviously meant I had either done something wrong or I hadn't done enough yet. Their mood had to be tied to my performance. I remember sitting at my kitchen counter, replaying a conversation I had had and trying to figure out what I had said wrong because the person still wasn't happy, as if it all depended on me. And it dawned on me, I don't think I've ever made them happy. I don't think they have ever actually changed their mood because of something I did or said. And then I thought, wait a minute, maybe this doesn't really work. Okay, so I'm a late bloomer. It takes me a while, but I finally figured that out. If that sounds familiar to you, maybe you've been living with that same broken pattern of thinking. Here's one way to find out. The next time you're around someone whose mood shifts, just notice the question that pops up in your head. Is it, what's wrong with them? Or is it, what did I do and how can I fix this? The second one, that's the thermostat question. There's something you should know though. Naming it, recognizing it, discovering it did not stop me from doing it. Knowing I wasn't the thermostat and feeling and acting like I wasn't the thermostat were 2 completely different things. This was something that was so ingrained into my belief system that it had become a reflex. And insight doesn't undo reflex. Only practice does that. Which leads me to the next truth. Truth number 2, catching the reflex before it fires. The second thing was learning to catch myself before I adjusted myself or the things around me to shift someone's mood, not after. It was happening in the seconds before anyone even reacted. I was already softening, already rehearsing, already bracing. Because I was so tuned into those around me, I already could see the way the situation was going. My old pattern meant I'd walk into a room and my whole posture would shift depending on who was in it before a single word was said. I called it being considerate. It was actually forecasting. The first time I finally stopped and recognized what I was doing, trying to control or change the atmosphere around someone, I started catching it in my body first. I'd begin to feel anxious. My heart rate would increase, and my voice would go up a half step higher. Like, how about if we, or why don't we, or maybe you should. Those physical actions became my warning sign before my mind had even caught up with what I was doing. If you want to try this, figure out what your own physical response is. Maybe you hold your breath, tighten your jaw. Maybe you rehearse a sentence in your head before you say it out loud. those are your signals that you're already starting to try to adjust the temperature. So, catching the reflex leaves you standing there with nothing to do instead. You've stopped pre-managing the room. That's great. But if there's nothing to replace it, you're going to cave back into the old pattern again the first time it gets hard. And that leads me to the third truth. Truth number 3, the thermometer practice. The thing that actually changed how I moved through hard conversations was giving myself one honest question to ask instead of the old ones. Because I needed something to do in that gap, not just something to stop doing. So my old question was always some version of what will fix this or what will keep the peace. Both of these things hand the control over to someone else. So I started making myself pause. Before I respond to someone's mood now, I just take a beat and ask myself, what is true and what is actually mine to control? I answer both honestly before I open my mouth. That's being a thermometer. A thermometer doesn't argue with the temperature. It just reads it and reports it. That's the whole practice. Now, this will take practice, and it takes telling yourself the truth. Because if you are a people pleaser, we tend to get caught up in our own thoughts and perspectives about things. And we believe it does apply to us, or that it is our fault, or that it is ours to fix. But I'm telling you, 95% of the time, that is a lie. If you ask yourself what is true and leave out all of your conjecture and imagination, because remember, you're not a mind reader. You will just be actually reading the room. What is true? This person seems to be upset or grumpy. Now, if you're honest, the truth is you can't know why for certain. It could be something that happened earlier in the day. Maybe they had a bad night's sleep. Maybe they're just bloated and their pants are too tight. Be curious and don't just assume that it's you. Then ask the next question. What is actually mine to control? Again, don't try to mind read or foretell the future. All we can actually control is ourselves. So stop believing their mood is some kind of proof about you. Catch yourself adjusting before they've even reacted, and ask what's true and what's actually yours before you respond. These 3 truths are actually all connected to each other. Believing I wasn't the thermostat is what led me to notice the reflex and physical signals my body was giving. Noticing the reflex and signals is what forced me to need an actual changed response instead of just good intentions. Changing my response is what finally let the truth become real in my life instead of just something that I knew. Each one of these makes the next one necessary. So tell me in the comments, which one are you stuck on? Believing the truth you can't fix people or make them happy? Catching and stopping your reflexive actions? Or actually having something to replace that action? Whichever one you find the hardest is usually the one worth starting with. If anything I said today struck a chord in you, I want to invite you to subscribe and join me. I drop a new teaching each week on living your life in freedom in the identity God gave you. I'll see you next time.